Joe Biden had a private press conference on October 24th, 2022. And the first thing I will say to let you know that this is not born out of a reflex type of instinct to pour scorn or habit of criticizing any particular political party. I want you to know that I always do my best to be objective and fair in everything. So I'm going to say that he actually spoke quite fluently and coherently. And I was surprised at this, but I have to give him credit for that because most or much of his conversation actually seemed to be unscripted. Now, what I want to talk about is that he spoke to several different people and they were all worth watching in their own ways. But this one I think will probably go least remarked upon, which is why I feel I have to highlight it. Midway through the 33rd minute, yes, about halfway through the 33rd minute is what I'm drawing attention to, Biden asks a young obstetrician gynecologist. It seems as though she may have recently qualified or received her credentials from a university in Texas. Dr. Danielle Mathisen. Now, maybe she's not a woman. I'm not being sarcastic when I say I don't want to misgender her. Maybe she isn't, but I think that she is being referred to as a woman, so I'll say she. And she talked about how they were not allowed or they were prevented from learning or not being taught how to perform abortions in this university course which she studied, how to be an obstetrician gynecologist, OBGYN. She calls it a obgyn. So Biden says to her, I'm curious, how do you teach yourself how to perform abortions then? And she says, a papaya is a very good representation of a uterus, she says with a smirk. A uterus is Latin for a womb. And they love using this kind of clinical, clean language, you know. I never would have thought that if you change the word for something, just use a different word for something, that it would make the idea of the thing sound any less pleasant or more pleasant, but it works. Shakespeare said a rose by any other name would smell as sweet, but in this generation, if you called a rose a steaming pile of dung, then people would think it smelled awful, and vice versa. Anyway, she says a papaya is a very good representation of a uterus. A womb, in other words, she says with a smirk. So they practice a ritual of scraping out the soft flesh from the inside of the fruit, which represents their wombs. This is exactly, literally what they're doing. Now, to be fair, I don't think, even though she's smirking when she says this to Biden, that she actually finds it amusing. I think she just believes that she should think of the whole thing as being geniusly inventive and quirkily humorous. Now, although she declined to name her university, she says it's in Dallas. Biden mentioned University of West Texas, but she seemed to look at him as if to indicate, remember we said that we wouldn't say which university I went to. But her main thrust of the reason why she's talking to Biden is that she wants him to fix the problem that there's some laws or law in Texas that's preventing universities from being legally allowed to teach the students how to perform abortions. And she wants him to pass some federal law that will countermand or overrule whatever local law is somehow holding back the ability to perform abortions or to learn how to do them. However, she says, an outside physician, which is not part of the institution, would come in and teach us how to do it regardless. And perhaps very cleverly, because she wants to prevent any legal action coming upon this person, Danielle doesn't name this outside physician. But she says, she's wonderful. Oh, she's wonderful. Is she now? So how is she coming in to teach them if the law does not allow it? Does the university know about it? Or do they turn a blind eye? Or do they condone it? Are we to assume that she is sneaking onto campus after hours and furtively teaching them how to perform abortions under the cover of darkness? I think the picture they want to paint is that Despite some kind of illegitimate prohibition on their natural rights to kill unborn children, they are bravely defying the law because they know that they are morally superior by learning how to abort babies regardless. I think this is another example of the, oh, we're heroes risking our lives out here at the front lines mentality of the most narcissistic generation in history. Now, Danielle claims to have aborted her own baby, despite really wanting it. Now, even if there was a very good reason for this, she doesn't go into it. Again, this should be a very rare set of circumstances and not something to be smirking about. There's a legal principle which says that hard cases make bad law. And this is really just another way of expressing the common sense notion that if you make rules that apply to everyone from rare or exceptional circumstances, then you're going to create a nonsensical society where the things you are compelled to do rarely make any sense in normal life. Well, of course, fringe, bizarre, or perverse cases have been setting legal precedent for a long time now, and no one is surprised that we're living in times now at what many people feel like is the culmination of having to live in a society where nothing makes any sense. Now, I never wanted to remove choices from anyone, and I still don't really. But we are in an unlivable, untenable situation. I never wanted government or any supposed authority telling me what I can and can't do. We shouldn't have to legislate for morality. I don't want to live in Saudi Arabia, where every aspect of your life is regulated, from when you get up in the morning, what you can eat and when, what times during the day you must stop whatever you're doing and pray. I used to think you could just rely on everyone in our society to innately know what is right and wrong, and to make the best decisions based on a common sense understanding of unwritten rules, of just what is obviously common sense or the right thing to do without needing to be told. But this doesn't seem to be possible anymore. There's something wrong with these people. When the first and foremost issue for those charged with looking after the healthcare of people and specialising in the natal care of women, when these people are most concerned about how to kill their babies before they're born. And maybe it's because they feel they have everything else perfected, and this is the last remaining issue. But they never seem to preface anything they say with even a cursory statement about how obviously it's a terrible thing every time we have to kill an unborn child. But they don't. They seem to be single-mindedly focused on terminating pregnancies and ripping gestating babies from their mothers' wombs in the most callous ways possible. And they seem to deliberately project the most cavalier attitudes about it. Now, I was never a person who felt like I was anti-abortion as such. It was just that, in principle, I would never want to have a choice removed from anyone to make personal decisions. I wanted to be able to make any choice for myself in my life without the government or any supposed authority telling me what I can and can't do. But why abortion is such an insolvable issue, and this is probably why politicians love it, because it's an unsolvable issue and they'll get their whole career's mileage out of it, is that it's not just yourself who's being affected by it. I mean, even if you are a woman and you want to say, well, a father has no say in it, it just isn't so cut and dried as to believing that an unborn child is not really a person yet, or not a human being yet, or not even a baby yet if it's inside you. They'd like to be morally blind at the very least on this. So, people can't even agree in the first place on the terms of the argument. They can't agree on how many people are actually being affected by such a decision as aborting a baby. And a lot of them like to consider that the growing life inside the mother's womb is just a parasite. That's what makes them be able to feel like that they have the moral high ground and that their argument is the correct one. I didn't realise, but people have not just an infinite capacity for stupidity, but for self-delusion. And if you've never seen the undercover footage of people working at what they euphemistically call Planned Parenthood centres, they boast about how clever they are when they dismember babies in the womb. Now, even if you're squeamish, I am too. I implore you to watch. You need to see the expression on these people's faces when they boast about how clever they are, how ingenious they are, that they cut the larynx out of the baby first so that it can't scream when they then go on to cut its arms and legs off. Now, I know that talking about dismembering babies is supremely gruesome, but this is what we're talking about. And when unconscionably cruel acts are being committed, we can't let the innocent suffer just because we'd prefer not to know about these things. And what I found most shocking was that the very people who I would have thought would have found this kind of unbridled sadism most abhorrent were the very people who seemed to delight in it most. Yeah, all of the people who were boasting about their inventiveness in how to dismember babies were women. Now, I've written about this on my blog. The website address is just extrapolations.blog. And if you go there, I highly encourage you to read the article I've written. I've titled it Routine, Clean and Screamless. Have a look for it in the menu. I'll do my best to leave a link. If not in a pinned comment, because it might not stay there, I'll put it in the description. And that is obviously a riff on the promise that they made us in the 1970s about this woman, which is what the Roe v. Wade case was all about. And she claimed that she'd been raped, gang raped even, but she hadn't been. And she later on, many years later, admitted that she had been lying about the whole thing. But of course, the damage was done. And most people still aren't aware of this. Safe, legal and rare is what they said it was going to be. But of course, in hindsight, we now know that was just the foot in the door, or the thin end of the wedge, or the top of the slippery slope. So again, my blog is extrapolations.blog. I'll leave a link. Have a look at the article. Read it down. Have a look at the pictures and the embedded videos, because they can't be linked to here on YouTube, even though some of them are on YouTube. And I mean, it's not something that you're going to want to see, as in it's pleasant to see, but I made a promise a long time ago to God or the universe or whoever is in control of this existence, this realm, this world that we're in, or the fabric of reality, let's say, that I want to know the terrible truths. I don't want to live in ignorance. And no matter how terrifying and terrible the truth is, I don't want to shy away from it.